There are many schools of thought when discussing design as a method of communication. The one argument that I have personally heard that had an overwhelming voice is that design has to function. I've heard that design has to deliver a clear-cut message to the viewer, that without clarity, design becomes unsuccessful. The overarching theme of this side of the argument is that design is not art. The rules of design dictate that elements of design must harmonize in order to come through with the concrete message. On the other side of the coin, art cannot function in the manner that design does because art isn't trying to convey a message. Art is made for the sake of art, an expression of feeling in a visual medium. I personally don't see the line in the sand when it comes to the great debate of art versus design. Rather, I see the two disciplines as intertwined. When starting this capstone project, I wanted to explore the overlap between these combating forces and see just how the two practices can function when combined. In researching these potential channels of overlap, I found a wealth of designers that blur the lines of what can be justified as art. One prime example of a designer that successfully blends art and design is a relatively unknown graduate student by the name of Jasmine Jacobs. While she has not established herself as a big-time player in the design world, this Swedish designer is pushing the boundaries of advertising and poster design by welding elements of art, typography, and photography together. This served as the starting point of my inspiration to further explore this topic. As I continued my research, I found that contemporary European graphic design was miles ahead of any experimental design that was happening in America. I continued to become inspired as to how effortlessly European design merged photography, typography, and illustrations to create fully functioning artifacts. I came to the conclusion that I had to create something that voiced my vision as a designer in the form of a series of posters and a manifesto. Since I settled on creating my own set of guidelines within the design world, it came to me that a manifesto would be appropriate in solidifying these ideals. Penning my own manifesto came as a daunting task at first. I didn't know how to translate my feelings in the great debate of art versus design into words. But as I continued to draft my writings, I found that chunking my thoughts into phrases, mantras, and small blurbs gave my feelings a true voice. Writing phrases like, "Look, Ma, I'm designing," and then designing that phrase into something almost illegible gave my words a sense of character and poked fun at the graphic design purists I sought out to critique. Integrating my own brand of humor while sticking to my design virtues was of paramount importance in this process. There are pages of the manifesto that have full sentences that paint a picture of my skeptical disposition of traditional graphic design. Around the middle of writing the manifesto, I settled on naming it the Monotony Manifesto, as within the pages of the manifesto, I tried to relay the fact that design is everything but monotonous. As I continued writing and designing the manifesto, I kept referring back to my inspirations for kindling. As my thoughts mounted, I continued to come up with sentences and phrases that spoke to a larger movement. For instance, one of my frustrations with corporate design stemmed from a lack of personality within designers. Design is the gray cubicle of art, states my sentiments on the matter. When designing a manifesto, I took my own interest in illustration, photography, popular culture, fashion, and typography and integrated them. As I came up with all the facts for the design of the manifesto, I had faced the challenge of unifying them into a cohesive artifact. This is where I had to pivot from some of my initial ideas, as I ended up branding my manifesto. This proved to be crucial in conveying my overall message, as the Monotony Manifesto logo was birthed out of this change. Experimentation was a large part in the creative process in designing the manifesto. I constantly reiterated different designs and typefaces to establish a sense of cohesion. I found success in researching many experimental typefaces and utilizing them as designs with the manifesto. Not only does this enhance the visual experience, but it gives the viewer a moment to decipher the words that are presented to them without being blatantly obvious. With the recent outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, some of my ideas of the manifesto were cut short. I would have liked my manifesto to be printed out in editions of 25 in a zine format for distribution during our exhibition. In the manifesto, I'd have liked to have a folded up, full scale poster able to be ripped out so the owner could have a tangible poster to take along with them as well. In conjunction with my manifesto, I created a series of posters that reflected my viewpoints discussed in the manifesto. Some of my posters are phrased directly from my writings, while others are made in response to the manifesto. This offers a variety of viewpoints that can be extrapolated from the manifesto itself, along with some of the phrases in the manifesto coming to life in their own poster designs. Once again, the main goal in creating my designs for my posters was to deviate from standard design. In breaking up tradition, I took the task of creating something that isn't necessarily conventional or functional. Rather, it stands as an art form itself, with components of graphic design embedded. My process in creating posters was in no way linear. I often sketched one element of a poster, then got into Photoshop or Illustrator and tinkered with that element with the phrase I had in mind. I tended to pair whatever element I was working with an appropriate typeface to further the message I was trying to convey. Throughout my process of poster making, I constantly thought of ways to how to break the mold of the conventional poster. This is where I utilized GIFs into the fold, as I found them to be a great way to showcase multiple iterations of the same poster using basic animation techniques. As I continued to curate imagery for my poster designs, I found that these elements did not have any correlation besides my personal interests. A watershed moment in this process was writing the phrase, "I am the glue." This served as my personal mantra for my process, as it was up to me to use my knowledge of experimental design to unify these elements. The flexibility in experimenting in new techniques was quite liberating during my poster making process. I much rather had the viewer of my pieces take their time and absorb the content of what they're viewing rather than it immediately click for them. I believe that this is where the line blurs between art and design. As my undergraduate career comes to an end, I found that this capstone project saw me at my most self explorative. The elements in which I honed my abilities to design and create art were always within me, a true expression of oneself. It is up to me going forward to create purposeful noise within the art and design communities. Finally, here are a list of resources that I use for my research, which include scholarly essays, books, MFA graduate exhibitions, studios, and workshop links.